Greetings and salutations, valued listener. Apologies if the audio quality is a little worse in this one than it was before. I have plugged in my phone. I'm not sure if this is going to affect the audio quality in any way. It shouldn't realistically, but if it does, we'll see. This is going to be a longer one because I've officially worked out that yeah, no, I can record for way longer than I thought on this thing. Uh, Originally, like, I was only doing like 10-minute videos because I didn't want the recording to get cut off, but it looks like I can reach up to like 30 minutes. So I'm gonna try and prolong this one to like 20 and see what happens. So without further ado, this is part 4, I think, of my reading of The Nazis and the Supernatural by Michael Fitzgerald. If you haven't read or listened to the previous parts, I highly recommend you do. Playlist is in the playlist section on the channel. While you're there, feel free to like and subscribe if you so choose. You don't have to, but it's free. You can always undo it later. So get comfy, get cozy, get your blanket ready, get yourself a beverage of your choice. I have Arizona Arnold Palmer with me. Love that stuff. Not sponsored at all, by the way. I just really like it. Yeah, without further ado, here we pick up where we left off at Men, Beasts, and Gods. It was the publication of a highly colorful book in 1923 that not only brought Unger and Sternberg's name into prominence, but also introduced the idea of Agarthy to a wider audience. Men, Beasts, and Gods became a bestseller and once more stimulated German interest in Tibet, Mongolia, and the Far East. Ferdinand Ossendowski was a natural storyteller, and his book Men, Beasts, and Gods is a mixture of fact, sensationalism, speculation, and downright invention. In spite of his claims, it is certain that Ossendowski never went to Tibet. On the other hand, he was in Mongolia, and he did meet with Unger and Sternberg and a number of other larger-than-life characters, some of whom were Tibetan. In Mongolia, he also met a Siberian by the name Tushingaon Lama. Tushingaon claimed to be a personal friend of the Dalai Lama and told Ossendowski many things about Tibet. He also made an intriguing reference to the king of the world in Agarthy, claiming that he was the only living man who was ever in Agarthy, a revelation that fascinated and intrigued Ossendowski. Later, he met other Tibetan exiles in Mongolia who gave him more details than the reticent Siberian informant. One of them told him the subterranean people have reached the highest knowledge. Now it is a large kingdom, millions of men, with the king of the world as their ruler. The other man told Ossendowski that the kingdom is called Agarthy. It extends throughout the subterranean passages of the whole world. Later, still another Tibetan exile in Mongolia told him that the gypsies had lived in Agarthy for many centuries, and when they emerged, they brought with them the psychic powers they had learned from the secret chiefs of the underground kingdom. Ossendowski met Unger and Sternberg and became fascinated by his vision. He also met the Tashi Lama, who was exiled to Mongolia following a feud with the Dalai Lama. The Tashi Lama claimed that in his old monastery in Shigatse, there was a message from the king of the world written on tablets of gold. No one had ever been able to decipher the writing on them, which was in an unknown language, but in a state of enlightenment, the meaning of the tablets penetrated the Lama's brain. The Tashi Lama claimed that he had been king of Shambhala in a previous incarnation. During his exile, he found many Kalachakra schools in Mongolia and northwest China. The Tashi claimed to be in direct touch with the masters of Shambhala. Ossendowski's account seems highly fanciful, and even on the publication of his book, it was denounced by the Swedish explorer Sven Hedin as a fabrication. There is certainly no doubt that Ossendowski's claim to have visited Tibet is as false as Hedin, who made several previous expeditions to the country, demonstrated clearly. He also pointed out that the story of Agarthy was probably lifted wholesale from a 19th century French writer. On the other hand, the story of Agarthy predates the source Hedin gives by at least 20 years. It was also claimed by the author, cited by the Swedish explorer, that he had heard of Agartha, as he called it, from an Indian adept. In addition, the Mongolian part of Ossendowski's adventures rings true. In particular, his accounts of Ungern Sternberg's attitude and behavior is corroborated from independent sources, including a distant relative, Count Hermann Kieserling. The accounts he gives of Shambhala and Agarthy are also supported by other Mongolian sources. There is little doubt that Ossendowski was a romancer who frequently improved upon the stories he was told, a plagiarist of other writers' work, and one who invented some of his material out of whole cloth, but the probability remains that the core of his book is true. Agarthy may or may not have been an account of an actual place, past or present, but there is no doubt that perhaps because of its assimilability with Leighton's fictional race of Vril Ya, the myth attracted considerable support from within the Vril society. Nazi attitude to facts. Many Nazis, including Hitler, had a curious attitude towards facts. When, for instance, he was told bluntly by Rauschning that the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion was a crude forgery, Hitler's response was strange. He did not dispute Rauschning's statement, but simply replied that he did not care. What Hitler found appalling about them was what he described as their intrinsic truth. In the same way, Haushofer and other initiates of the Vril Society were not concerned with the absolute veracity of the Agarthy story. What concerned them was its intrinsic truth, which in their eyes meant the genuine existence upon the planet of a superior race of subterranean beings. Legends of underground dwellers are very ancient and can be found in stories dating back at least as far as 3000 BC. The general tendency nowadays is to regard them as mythical or symbolic, but the Vril Society took them literally, as many religious believers have for thousands of years. All right, I'm going to take a sip. There we go, that's the stuff. Nazi expeditions to Tibet. Haushofer's conviction that Agarthy and Shambhala lay in Tibet rather than Mongolia led to a number of Nazi expeditions in search of these fabled lands. As well as exploring Tibet, they also recruited teams of spelunkers to descend into the caves and mines in Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. They were not directed by... What the heck is that word? They were not directed by the Bro, I'm butchering this one. Anenurbe. It's like italicized, like it's like proper and important, but like there's no background to this one at all within the previous text. I don't know why it's whatever. They were directed by the Anenurbe to seek out tunnels and other possible entrances to the subterranean kingdom of the Vril Ya. A German army colonel was even ordered to research Leighton's life to try and discover the location of the caves he had mentioned in his novel. Underground tunnels in Czechoslovakia. In 1939, 2 German expeditions were sent to Czechoslovakia to investigate tunnels and mines that might be linked to an underground world. One of the sites on which they worked was later found by a Czech resistance group in October of 1944. The group's leader, Dr. Antonin Horak, described how the partisans came across a tunnel while sheltering in a large underground cavern. Horak explored the tunnel for some distance before he came across a section that appeared to be recent and was clearly man-made. Lighting some of the torches, I saw that I was in a spacious, curved black shaft formed by cliff-like walls. The floor in the incline was a solid lime pavement. It was clear that the tunnel extended far beyond the area that he could see by the light of his flickering torches. Attempting to extract samples of the material, he discovered not only that his pickaxe failed to loosen the lime pavement, but that even firing his pistol at the wall had no effect. The frustrated Horak had to abandon the attempt to obtain samples. He wrote, "I sat there by the fire speculating. How far did it reach into the rocks, I wondered? Who or what put it into the mountain? Was it man-made? And was it at last proof of the truth in the legends like Plato's of long-lost civilizations with magic technologies, which our reason cannot grasp or believe?" Whatever the secrets of the tunnel within the cave may have held remain a mystery to this day. All that Horak could do was abandon his attempt and then some years later give an account of his strange discovery. Ernst Schaefer's expedition to Tibet. Ernst Schaefer took part in 3 expeditions to Tibet, one in 1931 to 1932, another in 1934 to 36, and his most important one, 38 to 39. Schaefer led the last expedition under the sponsorship of the Ahnenerbe. No, it's not Ahnenerbe, it's Ahnenerbe, at a time when the Nazis were seeking to recruit Asian allies in the event of war. He published an account of his journey in the 1950 book In Fester Schiller, ein Forschaft. I'm sorry to any Germans listening to this. I am so sorry, guys. Ein Forscherfahrt durch Tibet nach Lhasa der Heiligen Stätte des Königtums. Festival of the White Scarves, a research journey through Tibet to Lhasa, the holy city of the God Kings. Schaefer's reception in Tibet was a mixed one. The powerful Nichun oracle issued a warning that Germany's leader was like a dragon. Tibet was in a difficult position with pro-Chinese, pro-Japanese, and pro-British parties within the government, and its principal consideration was to avoid becoming involved in any sort of military conflict. The outbreak of war made full-scale expeditions such as Schaefer's impractical. A further visit to Tibet is said to have occurred in 1942 to 43, but the details are so sketchy that it is impossible to form any conclusions upon the matter. The Nazi desire to discover and harness vril power remained no more than a dream. What is vril power? What exactly is this mysterious vril over which the Nazis expended so much time, effort, and money? Leighton, in his novel, remarks, "There is no word in any language I know that is an exact synonym for vril. I should call it electricity, except that it comprehends in its manifold branches other forces of nature to which our scientific nomenclature different names are assigned, such as magnetism, galvanism, etc. These people consider it that in vril they have arrived at the unity in natural energic agencies which has been conjectured by many philosophers above ground, and which Faraday thus intimidated under the misleading term of correlation. These subterranean philosophers assert that by one operation of vril, which Faraday would perhaps call atmospheric magnetism, they can influence the variations of temperature, in plain words, the weather, that by other operations akin to those mesmerism, electrobiology, odic force, etc., but applied scientifically through vril conductors, they can exercise influence over minds and bodies, animal and vegetable, to an extent unsurpassed in the romance of our mystics. To all such agencies they give the common name of vril." Leighton was writing a work of fiction, but did admit to a friend that he believed vril power really existed, though he gave no reason for his belief. Others were less reticent or hesitant and identified vril with all kinds of other forms of energy. The Vril Society believed that vril was a force which, if controlled, could be used as a means of acquiring spiritual enlightenment, to heal people, or to dominate the wills of others. They believed that Vril could be used to influence events on the material plane by concentrating the willpower while it was focused into a kind of laser beam through a combination of visualization and direct emotion. The final link in the chain was establishing a means of communicating with the secret chiefs and harnessing their powers. Okay, how long is this section? Okay, this is quite short. I should be able to get through the rest of this before the 20-minute mark. The Society's methods of raising Vril power. The Society employed two methods that it believed would enable the initiate to control and manipulate Vril power. The first was known as the scientific way and involved chemically isolating particles of a proton found within lead, after which they had to be captured in the photonic magnetism of Saturn or placed in lava from an active volcano. A chemical process was then alleged to follow that would make the initiate a master of Vril power. The alternative method was known as the mystic way and involved the initiate standing before a symbol representing Agarthy with colored lights and sonic vibrations in the background. It was then supposed to affect a symbolic regression of life, after which he would be filled with Vril power. Hitler had no scientific background at all and would certainly have been trained in the mystic way. How effective all these rituals actually were is open to question, but there is no doubt that Hitler's personality and ability to influence other people developed enormously as a result of his training in the Vril Society. As the Nazi Party grew and Hitler became a full-time politician, his direct involvement with the society decreased and became sporadic. In spite of that, the mere presence in his inner circle of men like Rosenberg, Hess, and Himmler meant that the ethos of Vril was constantly in the background. All right, I have to check something. Oh, we're probably going to finish the chapter this time. Believe it or not, in this recording. Rocket scientist Willy Ley reveals the secrets of the Vril Society. The very existence of the Vril Society remained a secret until the end of the Second World War. At the Nuremberg trials, some defendants mentioned Agarthy and Shambhala, but their testimony was dismissed or ignored, largely because the prosecution wanted to avoid insanity pleas. It was the German rocket scientist Willy Ley who first introduced the world to the Vril Society. In a 1947 essay entitled Pseudosciences Under the Nazi Regime, he explained that the society was founded under on the belief that light and subterranean world was literally true and that Vril power could help to create an Aryan super race. Tibetans were also invited to join the society because of Hashofer's belief that Agarthy lay within their country. The society's members believed that they had acquired knowledge of Vril power and could become as powerful as the underground dwellers. Ley revealed that they had developed a whole system of internal gymnastics by which the control of Vril power could be achieved. He described how the society invited members from across the world to assist them in researching and developing Aryan supermen. These included a number of Tibetan lamas with knowledge of the Agarthy. These monks lived in Berlin and worked with Hashofer and the Anunnaki. Their leader was known as the Man with Green Gloves, and he made a number of successful predictions about Hitler and the Nazis. In 1945, Soviet troops entered Berlin. They were astonished to discover a number of Tibetan corpses dressed in German uniform but bearing no badges or insignia of rank. Their bodies lay on the ground in orderly ranks, a ritual knife beside them, which they had used to commit suicide by piercing their stomachs rather than face the indignity of capture. It was a tragic end for the dark initiates of Agarthy. Such was the mental atmosphere in which Hitler moved between 1919 and 1923. To some extent, the effects of his training lasted for the rest of his life. Certainly, he remained convinced of the ability of willpower to manipulate events until the bitter end. Small in number, full of bizarre and unscientific notions, the Vril Society nevertheless wielded a power and influence out of all proportion to the size of its memberships. The millions squandered on Welsenberg Wellsburg Castle, and a vast number of pseudoscientific and occult projects and the poisonous racial fantasies that ended in genocide all had their origins in the rituals and doctrines that Hitler imbibed from the Vril Society. We will pick up with Chapter 3, A New Religion for Germany, in the next episode. That concludes Chapter 2. Thank you all for listening. I will see you in the next episode. Take care and be well.